We have breaking news in the Blue Jays world on this Friday morning involving a potential, could have been an off-season move. It could have been a roster change that would have impacted the organization. It's a move that's not too surprising for those that have been around the organization over the last few years. Mark Shapiro, the president and CEO of the organization for the last decade, Rogers Communication announcing a 5-year extension with Shapiro. In a statement surrounding the news, Shapiro had to say this. He says the opportunity to lead the Blue Jays organization over the past 10 years has been incredibly fulfilling. Together, we've built an organization with people who care deeply about baseball and take immense pride in being Canada's team. I am grateful and honored to be able to continue that work. Anybody that has been around this organization, not too surprised by this news. It would have been an incredible misstep if for some reason they would not have come to an agreement of re-signing Mark Shapiro, because he has been instrumental in helping change the narrative around the Toronto Blue Jays, but also the look surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays and free agents potentially coming here. I'm going to start off with talking about Dunedin and the spring training facility that they opened a few years ago that is state of the art. It is leaps and bounds better than any other training facility for a Major League Baseball club in the league. And a reason for this is because they wanted to help attract free agents. They wanted the players that are on the roster to know that they are investing in them. They wanted to make sure that they had all of the resources they didn't even know they needed to help them get to the best baseball they could potentially play. They invest in their players, and that's why you're seeing, that rumored deal that could have happened with Shohei Ohtani, or the recent signing of Dylan Cease. They went to this training facilities, showed them how they're investing in the players and in the organization, because they want them to succeed at all levels, and they want them to see their season to start off great when they sign, and then they go to the spring training that starts in early February. Then when you actually shift your attention to the Rogers Center and you look at what's available for the team there, any former Blue Jay that I have met or had the chance to speak to in the last couple of years, they talk about the clubhouse and how they've completely changed it and renovated. You're seeing state-of-the-art equipment there available for them to look at, whether it be analytics, which I know is a hot topic for a lot of people, but for those players that want to see it, it's available for them. When it comes to recovery and rest, all of that is available for them there. They have any piece of technology you think you might need or you've never heard of available for their roster, because like I said, they are investing in the players, and the players love to see that. On top of that, you heard players, their wives, after this World Series run, whether it be Shane Bieber, who he and his wife joined the Blue Jays organization later in the year, how they're investing in them and making sure that they are happy and comfortable, which includes a beautiful daycare center for their families and friends that has like a playhouse within the building. They make it family friendly, and they make sure that they cater and make sure that anybody that was in this organization feels great and they feel like they can succeed and reach another level. Yes, it's not just Mark that makes those decisions, but he is a big part of it. And when it comes to the fans, yes, I know you're upset that the ticket prices have been raised, but when you look at how they've transformed the Rogers Center in the last several years, you can't really be angry about it, especially if you're somebody that would sit around the third baseline or near the outfield, because the way that it was built, it was a multi-purpose facility that would see football games, all this other things. So the outfield, you would be looking at other fans rather than actually having it face towards home plate. That was one of the small changes. They've added multiple clubs for people to have experiences, whether you have a tiny wallet or a big wallet. It's more enjoyable experience, that they made it look like a ballpark. The Corona rooftop has been a massive hit. No matter what time of the season, it is always packed. They also have a family-friendly zone. So all of these are topics of conversations, and that are bringing in fans to want to watch the Blue Jays when maybe sometimes they're not playing great. And when they are, it's an absolute party. But for the players, which everybody knows, you want to have a successful baseball team, he was a big part in adding these pieces to make free agents want to come here. So if they were to not make a deal with Shapiro, it would be crazy. But we knew this was going to happen, because even in the World Series run, he said he didn't think it was appropriate to be talking about his contract, but the conversations, they were great, and it looked like it was going to be a mutual agreement. Dan?
Yeah, it's been a long time now for Mark Shapiro here, right? 10 years ago is when he started, and he was the bad guy 10 years ago. He took over for Alex Anthopoulos, or came in as president on top of Alex Anthopoulos, and the fan base was just absolutely in love with AA back then, and Shapiro was the bad guy that moved on from Anthopoulos. And at the time, the storyline was he scolded Anthopoulos for trading all those picks and prospects that he traded to have that great 2015 run. And maybe that's where the fan approval rating wasn't always the highest for Shapiro, and below him, Ross Atkins. But you see what they've done with the organization, as you've outlined, Lindsay, in how the Rogers Center is now, what they've done in Dunedin. And it culminated this year with the World Series appearance, where you got Vladdy signed to a $500 million contract. It's a destination for free agents, and they've built an infrastructure that you can see leads to sustained success on the field and off the field from a business perspective. And that's why Mark Shapiro's approval rating from a fan base went from, 0 to 100 real quick, maybe, for Blue Jays fans, especially when you see that World Series team and the way that they're already investing in trying to get back to the World Series this year. This is a big-time win for the Blue Jays, and obviously one that's been years in the making with Mark Shapiro.
After missing out on Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto, imagine reading this news in March of 2025. You mentioned Alex Anthopoulos, who is the former Toronto Blue Jays GM, who is beloved in the city because he built a championship level squad in 15 and in 16. And when Shapiro joins the Blue Jays front office in 16, Toronto eventually loses to his former squad, the Cleveland Indians at the time, in the ALCS. After brief showings in the playoffs in 2020, 2022, 2023, and the Blue Jays lost 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 in those playoffs, things were dicey in Toronto. And I got to admit, when Mark Shapiro decided to trade Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. for Dalton Varsho, who was relatively unknown to Toronto Blue Jays fans, trading in a top prospect in Moreno for this unknown outfielder and catcher, I was down. I was down on the front office, admittedly, and so was the group chat, just because we couldn't see the vision. And then the following year, Moreno was catching for Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly in the World Series. Gurriel's hitting 300 against the Dodgers in the ALDS and over 300 in the World Series against the Texas Rangers. Over his 10-year tenure, the Toronto Blue Jays are 777 and 741. I will give Shapiro and Ross Atkins and the rest of the front office staff credit because of making critical decisions in identifying talent and personnel and taking chances on journeymen and relatively unknown talent. A quick timeline here. 2023, Nathan Lucas spent 10 years in the minors before making the Blue Jays 2023 opening day roster. They signed Ernie Clement, signed from Oakland in May of 2023. He goes on to hit 30 hits set a record with 30 hits in the 2025 postseason. David Schneider was called up in August of 2023. Homers in his debut, a great position player for the Blue Jays. And in 25, Addison Barger is called up in April. And then in the World Series has 12 hits, a homer, 5 RBI, batting .480. Like, these are some, like the Adam Sandler movie, uncut gems that Shapiro and Atkins and the staff were able to find. So here you guys go. And finally, obviously, the biggest of the uncut gems is Trey Savage, who was the 20th overall pick in the 2024 MLB draft, 3-1 in the World Series, in the postseason. 3.58 ERA, 39 strikeouts. The kid was electric. So I have to give him and his staff credit, Mike Shapiro and his staff credit for that. And then finally, just showing that Edward Rogers, demonstrating him through the numbers and the data that if you want top talent to represent the Toronto Blue Jays, you have to pay for it. And Edward Rogers has agreed. As Dan said, Lindsay gave Vladimir Guerrero a $500 million contract. It is rumored that Kyle Tucker is going to command somewhere around $400 million. And the Blue Jays already, without Kyle Tucker, already have the highest payroll in the American League, somewhere around $265. So he said, Edward Rogers says, or Mark Shapiro says, show me the money. And Rogers like, here you go. And Blue Jays fans rejoice because we are in line for another long playoff stretch, a playoff run in 2026.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Fingers
I
crossed.
love this.
It is so true. Cab, I just want to pick up on that. Sorry, Lindsay, but one of the things that you mentioned, like finding diamonds in the rough, finding the uncut gems that the Jays had needed to help get this roster over the top. One thing, the fan approval rating was very low, and for a lot of GMs, and I've seen coaches and GMs across sports. I've seen it in hockey. Most recently, covering the Vancouver Canucks, Rick Tocchet said he catered to the fan base that wanted to see more of an offensive team, and that was sort of the beginning of the end for his time with the Vancouver Canucks. But as much as the fan base has been loud and not always been in line with the vision that Shapiro has had for the Blue Jays, he stuck to his guns. He stuck to the courage of his convictions is what he had, and continued with the vision he had for the team, built on defense and pitching and where it needed to go in order for them to get back to World Series contention. And now that vision is being actualized. So that's one of the other big successes I've seen with Shapiro is, despite all the noise and maybe the disapproval of a fan base, you've stuck to what your vision was and had the courage of your convictions to build the contender that you felt you could with this Blue Jays roster. And that's a really impressive part of the entire Shapiro era with the Blue Jays.
I'm excited to see the Shapiro era continue with the Toronto Blue Jays in this organization. It was not unexpected this would happen, but this is great news for the organization and the fan base. I know the job is not done. There's still some work that they're going to try to do when it comes to the actual roster. My only downfall for Mark's legacy right now is that there's not been a dog day at the park. He has a lovely dog named Cleo. He says it is out of his hands, and you bet I will ask him when we talk to him eventually on the pod, but we'll see. Pitchers and catchers, they report to spring training on February 11th, so the baseball, it's not that far out, guys.